What's going on? What's crack-a-lackin', my peoples? I'm Jerry Quickley, and this is happening. I am so happy to kick off and crack open our Culture Corner Fridays with our very first inaugural guest, if you will. And I'm very happy to be joined by my friend, co-collaborator and co-conspirator with MC Philly Phil, the one and only Lavinia Meijer. Lavinia is a Dutch harpist. She's actually... her family is Dutch Austrian. She's adopted. She is Dutch Korean, and she's here today to talk about her work as a classical artist, player, composer, and culture maker. And I couldn't be happier to welcome her to This Is Happening. Lavinia Meijer, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jerry. I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming in, stopping while you're just in LA for a few days. I really appreciate you stopping by. First off, though, can you talk about what you were here in LA to do? Can you let our audience know? Is that talkable yet? Not yet.
It's a little bit secret yet.
Secret. Okay.
I'm here for you.
So
as
she's
well.
here. Yeah, she's here for the show, as far as you know. It's a secret project we can't talk about. And Lavinia travels, like many professional musicians, globally to perform her work and to collaborate with others. Lavinia and I have done some extensive collaborations with MC Philly Phil, a.k.a. The Fire, a.k.a. Yoda, a.k.a. Philip Glass. And that's actually how I met you, was through us working together with Phil. I know a lot of musicians, I know because they all ask me, they say, Jerry, what's it like working with Phil? So, you know, before we get into your records, let's start with that. Like, how did you come to work with Philip Glass, and why do you work with him, and what's it like?
Well, Philip Glass, he's pretty much becoming my musical guru. And I started playing the harp when I was a kid, and I always wanted to show the possibilities of the harp as a solo instrument, believing that the harp has a little bit of you can say the stereotypically image of this waterfall, angelic, sweet instrument. So I started arranging music from, for example, Radiohead, and doing all kind of collaborations. And then through mutual friends, actually, Robert Mallarge, Hans Heg, I met Philip Glass. He was told about me at first, and he was like, I'm not sure harp. But he came to Amsterdam to perform, and I live in Amsterdam, and he invited me to play it at this concert. And I was very honored, but at the same time, I didn't know what he wanted me to play. So I asked him, what do you want me to play? And he said, well, look at my Metamorphosis. It's a piece for solo piano, and see if you can arrange that. And so I did, and I played it for him. And he said not only that he really liked the arrangements, but that it also gave him new insights in his own music to hear me perform his music on the harp.
Wow.
And for me, that was one of the biggest compliments I could ever get, knowing that this is about mutual respect from artist to artist.
Right.
And since then, we've stayed in touch. We've performed a couple of times recently at San Francisco Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very open-minded person, down-to-earth, has a great sense of humor. And he connects me to all kind of different artists that he works with, because he also says, well, you can fit in everywhere, and you want to, and that's true.
Yeah.
And that's where I really feel we're on mutual ground, whereas I've always wanted to open up the harp and connect to different arts, and Philip has done that his whole life, is still doing it at the age of 81.
Right.
It's unbelievable. So he's really my musical guru.
Yeah. It's the one striking observation that I've get to really set in with me over the years that I've been happily collaborating with Phil, is that there are no boundaries, there are no walls. That if you're in the room collaborating, you're in the room collaborating for a reason, and everyone's an equal. And
Yes.
doesn't they don't, your credentials are irrelevant. It's like, oh, what are we doing today? Like, what's the excitement? What do you want to do today? And it's like the sense of an open road in secure hands and with no walls. And so I just find it a joy to collaborate with him and with you, because you've been you've been a big part of the collaborations, several of the collaborations I've done with Phil.
Yes, and it was great working with you too, Jerry, and the music and your text. And I've never heard that kind of performance that you did, and it was so intense. And that's where you see that artists from all kind of different backgrounds are joined together by Philip Glass, and they are just putting everything they know and want to achieve in this group together. And it's just like it explodes. It becomes so much more.
Yeah, it's more than the sum of its parts.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Right. Well, in addition to the work that Lavinia has been engaged with Philip Glass, she's very much her own musician and composer and artist. She's released 10 records, 4 on Sony. And before we get to your last double album from Sony, I wanted to talk about a piece that you have. I want to talk about a piece you have written that you're a part of, actually, that you've played, called "Lying Piece of Shit." It's part of a larger movement called "Cities Change the Songs of Birds" by Jacob Terfelhauser, Jacob TV. And when you played this piece, we're going to play some of it here now. Before we play, I want to chat with you about it. When you played this piece, "A Lying Piece of Shit," at a harpist convention, you were pretty much considered a musical terrorist, were you not? Tell us what happened. Tell us about the harp convention, the set of circumstances in which you played this, and what the response was.
Well, my search has always been to break up the harp and to bring it to different worlds that people would not expect it in. And Jacob TV is one of those composers that are really doing groundbreaking music. And so I asked him for a piece, but I also asked him do something that has not been done before. So also he thought about what's this image of the harp we both want to break down, and so he
weeping willows, no ponds, no swans.
So he connected it to stories, real people living in New York, women who are drug addicts, who are suffering in came into crime, and those voices he connected it with music that I performed with those voices, and it became a very intense piece in which I was soaked into their reality, and I was amazed about the power of the piece. So I premiered it at this harp congress, and the first minute harpist stood up and left the hall, and the day after, a blog appeared with the title "Musical Terrorism" that referred to this piece as the piece that was musical terrorism. And they spoke about how the harp, being the holy instrument of King David, should not be performed in this way. And it was like a 70-page long discussion about people who agreed, and fortunately there were couple of people who disagreed, saying, no, this is really refreshing. And at first, Jacob and I were very shocked about this. But then Jacob mentioned, and I was actually thinking, yeah, you're right. He said, in this time where we live, where everything is possible and everything is being done, to create such a shocking moment, that's actually a big compliment. And I thought, well, I guess you're right. But at the same time, it was never meant to be shocking. it was about reality, about combining it with music. So we both answered this blog after 70 pages, and after that it stopped the discussion, because I think people from that understood our point of view.
Let's give a listen to this groundbreaking piece that made other harp players around the world lose their minds.
The lying piece of shit. You mean you finished shooting your crack, right? Twice you left without fucking telling me nothing. You mean you finished shooting your crack, right? Twice you left without fucking telling me nothing. You mean you finished shooting your crack, right? The lying piece of shit. 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 Yeah, you won't disappear if I got $200 in my pocket. You're right on my fucking hip. Yeah, you won't disappear if I got $200 in my pocket. You're right on my fucking hip. I'm done with this shit. I told you fucking 3 times today. I'm done with this shit. I told you fucking 3 times today. Where'd you go now? Don't fucking leave me standing anywhere. Where'd you go now? Don't fucking leave me standing anywhere. You're gonna stop fucking disrespecting me, because I'll fucking knock you right the fuck out. Get your fucking hands off of me. Get your motherfucking hands off. Get your fucking hands off of me. Get your motherfucking hands off. Get your hands off of me, punk. You're such a piece of shit, man. Now, come here, motherfucker. I don't have no idea where you were. Yeah, that's your thank you, right? Now, goodbye. That's your thank you. Fuck! That's your thank you. Fuck! That's your thank you. Son of a bitch. Go get my stuff, Sebastian. Go get my stuff. You know I need that shit. Go get my things. Go get my stuff. You know I need that shit. Go get my things. So what? Damn it, Dad. Fuck! Damn it, Dad. Fuck! I don't even know where he threw my bag. Where is my bag? Where is my bag?
Welcome back. That was a really, really powerful piece called "Lying Piece of Shit." Can you tell the audience the text from that? That was taken from an HBO documentary. Yeah.
Yes, he uses voices, Jacob TV, from real people,
Right.
from documentaries, and actually he uses American voices because American language compared to Dutch language is much more musical. And I agree, Dutch, it's pretty like unmusical. And so
All the Dutch listeners are going to hate me for bringing you in and acknowledging the truth.
yes. But it has this flow. So when he hears those voices, he hears music, and that's how he composes it.
Right.
And it's really great technique that he mastered, and has been working with that for years.
Right. Let me ask you, Lavinia. I want to get at why you're a musician, why you're an artist, why have you decided to spend your life this way as opposed to, I don't know, a carpenter, doctor, masseuse, teacher, like anything in the world that you could engage in.
I know. There's so much to choose from.
Exactly right. The world is so big. You and your brother were adopted by a Dutch family when you were very young. You were 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. I just said everything is possible to choose from, but being said that it's not the case when you grow up in a country where you don't have those possibilities. And back in the 70s, 80s, South Korea was a very poor country. Nowadays, it's doing very well. But I grew up not having many possibilities. So my parents got divorced, and we went to our father, because it's more normal in Korea, certainly back in that time, that people from a divorced family would go to the father, because the father makes a living, the money. But at the same time, he wasn't there to support us because he had to work, and he didn't have support from family or friends. So we were left alone for days, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my brother actually took me by the hand and by the houses to ask for food to survive. So our father decided this is not how I wanted the life of my children to be. So he put us up for adoption, and we got very lucky because within a couple of months we were adopted by a wonderful family. My father's Dutch, my mother's Austrian. They had one daughter by themselves, and then they decided to adopt. So then my brother and I came, and later also a brother from Ethiopia. So we're a very colored family.
Yeah, very multicultural Dutch family.
I always say my family is the example for world peace.
Right, you're right. You're right about that.
No, but growing up, none of my parents are musicians. So at the age of 8, I just wanted to play an instrument. I knew I didn't want to play an instrument that everybody already played. I wanted to play something unique. That was the one thing I knew. And then one day at school, I met a girl who played the harp. And when I saw that instrument, I knew that is the instrument I've been looking for. That's the unique instrument. The sound was for me the closest to the voice. You embrace it. You play it with your bare fingertips. It's so direct. It's so pure. So I fell in love with it, but I didn't start playing it because I wanted to become a harpist star. I just played it for fun. But then after 2 years, I was discovered as a young talent. I was 11. And then I became like this young talent that could go to this competition and then do these concerts and travel to Japan and New York. And it was an amazing time, and I really fell in love with performing, to share my music with the audiences, see their excitement and to connect. I was very shy as a kid. I hardly dared to open my mouth, but through the harp, it just opened all the registers in me, and I could scream and sing and be happy and cheer and do all those emotions. And it has always been so much involved with my life. The music guides my life, maybe more than my life guides the music. I think it's and it has become more and more connected. I think also through music by Philip Glass and meeting him and seeing that he is, for me, a big example of how music is a way of living, how the arts is a way of living, how you cannot do without it. You get up in the morning with it and you go to sleep at night. And I've also started composing myself recently, and that has become also even more intensely connected to me as a person. And I actually don't believe that as an artist, if you only like in Korea, I sometimes see like these students that are playing the harp and they have to practice and after school 6-7 hours of practicing, and I think, well, it's great, you're becoming great harpists in technical way, but you have to live as well, because life experience is what you can bring in the music. No, it's about life. It's about who you meet, what you do, how you grow as a person.
Yeah. It occurs to me that when I remember when I started studying the saxophone, which I would never ever claim to be able to play, but I studied the saxophone for 4 years, starting when I was 12 years old, and I was so proud and happy of my connection with this instrument. Basically, you couldn't get me to take off my neck strap. I would shower with my neck strap on.
Not with your saxophone on. Right?
Yeah, no saxophone, right. The saxophone was safe, but and there's a real relationship between me and the equipment and me and the gear, whether it's the neck strap or a Rico number 4 reed, not to mention the instrument itself. And an alto saxophone, even in the hands of a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid, it's not that particularly large, but there is a relationship with the physicality of the instrument itself. And it strikes me that with a harp, that's a very unique relationship because it's so big, compared to the you or any other harp player. Can you talk a little bit about what your physical relationship with the harp is, and how has that changed over the years from when you first began investing your energy into harp playing? Because that's probably, I would imagine, it's got to be a strong or unique element of your life, your physical relationship with the instrument.
Yes, that's true. Well, I'm pretty small. Korean.
Right.
Asian.
So Lavinia, it's radio. Lavinia is, I don't know, about 5'2" and maybe 105 pounds soaking wet.
So actually, I didn't really know that there were big harps around, because when I saw this girl at my school and her harp, it was a tiny harp. So when I was 12, I changed from the small harp to the big harp, and when I first saw that big harp, I was like, oh, what did I choose? Because I was so small, it also has 7 pedals. So it's not only fingers, it's also footwork. My mother actually went in downtown to find small size shoes with enormous heels, so I could reach the outer pedals with my feet. So definitely it was a physical struggle from when I was a kid, but I wanted to play this bigger instrument so badly.
It's like climbing a mountain.
It was, and I had to build physical strength, because even if you think the harp is very angelic and sweet and soft, no, it is. It's a tough, badass instrument, because it has 47 strings. All the strings are very tight on there. There are a couple of 100 pounds of tension on those strings, so you need to have a lot of force and strength in your arms, but actually your whole body, because it's also hands and feet work. So I had to practice, and actually through the music of Philip Glass, I also developed a special muscle, extra muscle in my arm. I call it the glass muscle.
Oh, that's great.
All those repetitive notes. So yes, definitely a physical relationship with the harp. When I move the instrument, it's an 80-pound heavy instrument. It's very impractical size-wise, but at the same time, I know everywhere I go, there are always people who have never seen the harp this close. So I always also feel physically proud, because I bring this harp on stage and I'm the one playing it. So it's an extension of myself, because through the harp I can sing, I can communicate, I can speak out. But it's also just this huge, physical, amazing looking instrument that captures everybody's eyes from the moment you see it.
Right. It's like a piano case turned 90 degrees. It's just so big.
Yes, it's definitely, and transporting it can be a pain, but at the same time, it's worth all the trouble.
So just to follow up on the physicality of it, it occurs to me, like, you must, when you travel, you must have like local rental harps, right?
Yeah.
And what about your relation between the local rental harps? If you go and do a gig somewhere, I don't know, Japan or Buenos Aires or somewhere, versus the relationship you have with your primary harp at home.
Right.
What's that?
Well, I always try to think about pianists, because pianists have to play on different instruments all the time, even if it's within the same country. And with the harp, I'm able to put it in my car. I have a station, a very long station car, and wherever I can drive it to, I will bring my own instrument. But if I have to fly, yeah, I have to play on different harps, and I think that's where you have to be very flexible. Otherwise, it's impossible to have an international career as a harpist.
Right.
So sometimes it's a very good harp, and other times you think, but you still make the best out of it, and in the end, it's the music that matters.
Lavinia, I want to remind our listeners that my name's Jerry Quickley. This is happening, and my guest is Dutch-Korean harpist Lavinia Meijer, and we're discussing her life, her work, and her connection to her music. Lavinia, what connections is it that you see and feel between your work and the world? You know, I was gonna teach in Germany. I was happy to do that right after we did the show in Amsterdam. Right, I was gonna stay in Europe and teach in Germany, and then a few days later, right after we did the show at ADE, Donald Trump won.
Oh,
right?
yes.
So I was like, oh my God! Like all I had accomplished by if I were to stay in Europe was to essentially craft a luxurious lifeboat for me, and and float off and watch my village burn in the distance as I wave. And what I'm getting at is there's a real connection for me, regardless of whether or not it's always present in the work. There's a real connection between the political world that I live in and the choices that I make as an artist in terms of the work I choose to engage in and how I express the work. How does the world that you live in and the prism that you live in, what are the elements of light that you kind of let through your prism to help you build your work? How does the world that you live in impact your making of culture?
Well, I'm almost to say that the world makes my music. More and more I've become to be very much aware of that. When I grew up, I was trained classical, and I played a lot of classical pieces on the harp that have been written centuries ago. But then I started playing more modern music, and I felt like, well, this is music of today, and I live in today's world. I play an instrument that to some people are only like compared to heavenly music, but no, I live here on earth, here in this world. So I've actually always trying to pull the harp, the instrument, as close to myself and the world I live in. And I see things happening around me. I went to Lesbos last year in Greece, where I played at refugee camp for the children that came across from Turkey to Lesbos. And it was so important for me to experience that kind of music making for people that
have nothing.
That have nothing, where hope is almost reduced to nothing. Where music connects people from all kind of different cultures, and that's really the strength of music. And knowing that I can play some part of it to connect people, to make people aware that there's hope, we can build together. That's really has become a really big driving force behind myself as an artist. And I love playing all kind of different styles on the harp, and I hope I can keep doing that all my life. The US, yes. Even though with the Trump administration, I was able to get a work permit. So
Barely snuck in.
Yes. Well, I believe that also, if you look to the past, art has been created, and very important art has been created in times where things were shifting, where things were where people were really struggling with, is this where we want to go to? And then artists start really working with that kind of search. My upcoming theater solo tour will be about myself as an artist, placing myself in this time and wondering which kind of style period am I part of, where in 50 years' time from now on, we will look back to today, and how will we call this time? It's called Untitled. It's going to be Untitled Part 1, with hopefully more parts to follow, because this search, I think, is an ongoing search. And if you look into history, there are definitely signs of waves throughout the cultural development. I mean, Kandinsky, a century ago, he was complaining about all this technology and new and this busyness and hectic times we were living in. And nowadays, it just speaks so much to all of us.
Right.
So I think time is in a way, there are waves, but at the same time, I think it's very important to be aware of what is happening around you. And of course, we cannot determine exactly the style period we're living in now, because it's always something you determine later on,
Right.
looking back.
It's like, I think a lot of artists, you have one foot in the period in which you are and one foot in a place that's timeless, whether it's the
Yes.
past or the future. Before we lose you today, I want to thank you so much for being here and stopping off on your brief trip to Los Angeles and coming through the studio. I really, really appreciate it, Lavinia.
Thank you so much.
I also want to tell you how much I really enjoy playing with you. I really have enjoyed the shows that we've done together. Lavinia and I
too.
performed together in the States and Europe and places. And it's always been so much fun. And always you are part of a community of artists that helps me to find new spaces and helps me to reach new platforms with my new cultural platforms and new cultural spaces with my voice. So I'm really grateful for that.
Wow, thanks so much, Jerry. Thanks for having me, and this, I can say the same about you. It's great.
We're gonna end today with Lavinia playing a piece from our friend and our kind of co-Yoda, Mr. Philip Glass, and this is a composition called Koyaanisqatsi. And this is out on Sony Records. It's a double CD called The Glass Effect. Lavinia Meijer playing the music of Philip Glass. And this is a particularly beautiful arrangement of Koyaanisqatsi. Again, Lavinia, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to go out with your music. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.